Good morning. How may I help you? One room or two? How many nights will you be staying? Would you like breakfast in your room? Have you stayed with us before? Of course not.
You're at what used to be York's Lodge, but it closed in 1960, and it was boarded up when I first saw it. It was hard to tell that it was so amazing looking still because with plywood covering all the windows, it was dark and spooky, and these animals in here. We used to sneak in and wander around, and fortunately I was able to get it in the late 80s. And yeah, it sort of rambles on, so I'll walk you through a little bit. This is her favorite game. Pure joy, right? One more and then we'll go somewhere else. She usually does about 60 of those a day. I originally lived in the cabin across the way, and my sister lives across the road here, and my son is in what used to be the guide's house, which has this amazing barn attached to it, where I've done lots of videos and photos. This was the secret clubhouse of the Hardley Boys, and this is their devices for analyzing rocks. So the dogs would come in, and these things would light up, and they would come in through a trap door right there. That worked really great. It really looked like they just went boink from a secret entrance.
Scientific instruments, computers, and an MX-20 rock analyzer.
You don't get cabin fever here. I remember when I was living in that other building, I woke up to like 6 bats flying around my head. So I had a tennis racket to protect myself, and I walked, this was 3 in the morning, I walked by the tennis court in my underwear, and a car drove by. Yeah. I'll show you the first building that we had. This has nice features like loading wood from outside here, which I used in the movie as a secret entrance for my dogs. The evil caretaker and the psychotic nurse were in here scheming.
Run! Back to the clubhouse.
She loves people. She has laryngeal paralysis, which makes her larynx, when she gets overheated, she like honks almost. But she still wants to be here. All right, and upstairs is also where I have a lot of dog clothes. There's a couple of things that were made for the little movie, the Hardley Boys. This was Crookie Hardley's outfit. And it's made from a sweater I found, but this woman copied it and made more than one for me. And under this is the waitress uniform that the waitresses here wore. And this is the most interesting transformation, my painting studio. And it was the kitchen. It had conveyor belts and big stoves and dishwashers and things like that. Yeah, I love this room. This is the most recent painting I've been working on. They're postcards that have nothing to do with airplanes, but I've made airplanes out of them. Yeah, this is great. It's I can't throw it away, but it's kind of alive because it'll die before your eyes. Yeah. I got to calm her down a bit. Got to lie down, Flo. We'll see if this panting continues. Poor thing. Oh, well. All my dogs have sat in those chairs. She'll quiet down in a minute. She's funny, isn't she? I always liked Weimaraners because you could just turn them into other things, you know, they're like ghosts. And also, they like doing it for some reason. I had a dog growing up, a mutt, but since then, Weimaraners. In 1970, we saw an ad in the paper, Weimaraners, $35. And I flipped a coin 5 times, came up tails every time. So we got that dog, and I named it Man Ray, because he looked like a man, and he was in a ray of light, and because of Man Ray. And he was too young. He was only 6 weeks old. You should wait till they're 8 weeks, otherwise they don't know they're a dog. And I don't think he ever did know that he was a dog. But very attached, and just when I was trying to figure out how to do video and photo, since I didn't really know how, but I was learning, he seemed to be really interested in, it was almost like I was a hunter and I was trying to figure out my weapon or whatever. There's some attraction to the apparatus, and then I started to direct him normal things like licking up milk, or looking this way or that way, or just sitting, or things like that. I didn't dress him up or anthropomorphize them. He was in a lot of my early videos. He was an amazing video dog. So he had I had a really strong control of language over him. And he loved certain things, so I could get him to, you know, really respond. And that's the subject of most of my videos from the early 70s. I had one of my Weimaraners was sort of shy of the camera. I think it was probably the lights. She would just get ready and she'd go like this. And but she was the most athletic. So we did a lot of action shots with her. There's one where she's standing on her hands on the dock. My second dog, after Man Ray, had puppies. That was Fay Ray. And she had 8 puppies, and a lot of those were in the Works for Children, the movies, and so forth.
Alphabet soup.
One of them had puppies, and their puppy had puppies, but that line died out, and then I got her 14 years ago, and that's it.
Is she going to be the last one?
I think so. I'm 81, so I'll be in my mid-90s. Well, I'll be like, when the dog's 20, I'll be 101. So, so, you know, we got to figure out stuff like that, right? I was Billy the artist. My work was always put up by my teachers in first grade, and my parents pinned my work up, and I really got recognition for it. I mean, there was always 1 or 2 kids that were the good drawers. The boys did the airplanes, and the girls drew the horses. So yeah, I like to draw pictures. And I remember looking out my window, and my uncle gave me a set of really good watercolor paper when I was 6 or 7, with sable brushes and Darsh watercolor paper. So I used those, and I used to look at scenes out my window and imagine what I just missed. And so when I started working on the postcards, that's what I did. I said, here's the card, but what's just beyond it? So I imagined what's out there, and that was kind of recalling an early memory of painting back then. I studied painting, but in the 60s, painting was like a dirty word, and painting was dead, so to speak. And I started to do, I went to grad school in Illinois, and I was working with composers there and doing performances and interactive things, and I got actually a fellowship to work with the biological computer lab. I worked with scientists, cybernetic scientists, and made interactive machines. And that's what I did my graduate thesis on. And then, of course, having an MFA in painting, but having no painting background, it was pretty much impossible to get a job teaching painting. So whatever happened, I think was good, because I moved to LA, got a dog, and became a famous artist. I mean, that was the only way I could survive. So I was getting a certain amount of attention with my work. You know, then I started getting group shows and important group shows, and then I got a gallery in New York and one in Paris, and then I started to show my work. I eventually moved to New York in 1972 or 3, and showed with Sesame Gallery and so forth. And then I started painting, and that was, one of my dealers loved my painting, Holly Solomon. The others didn't really know what it was. And the reporter from the New York Times came to my opening and talked to me, and she said, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't you. In other words, you're the dog photographer or whatever you are, but I'm here to review your show. And she said it looked like I put art in a blender. And I liked that. That seemed good, yes, because I didn't know what I was doing. But if that's what I was doing, so be it. And pretty much that's carried me ever since. You know, I've always loved to work with my dogs. So as long as I had dogs that I wanted to work, I would always use them. And they would always need to be used. So I kind of had like a split personality. One where I worked alone in my studio, you know, and then I'd go back and work with them. For what, you know, 1978, I stopped working with a dog. I didn't want to be nailed to the dog cross. It just seemed like enough. So Man Ray was miserable, and so was I, but we didn't do it for a whole year. And then, fortunately, I was invited to use this amazing camera, the Polaroid 20 by 24. Have you ever seen pictures of that? It's bigger than a refrigerator. I mean, it's huge. It takes that size picture. It takes a crew. You have to rent it or get it somehow, and it's pretty amazing. And that really rejuvenated my interest in working with the dogs and with photography. Yeah, it's a unique beast, and you know, the dogs, they'd be raised up, and we'd work at eye level with them, and they could go really close. I think that's in a way why I started dressing them, because they'd be on stools to make them tall, and then I would drape them, and then my assistant would be behind them, steadying them, look like they had hands, and so I'd throw a wig on and dresses and so forth, and that sort of spawned that whole kind of a dirty word, the dressed up dog.
Wondering, but not wondering, what lay ahead?
You know, during minimalism, you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that, and then someone did, and then it became okay. And that was a big deal. I mean, I was a minimal conceptualist, and it was, you felt like you were being naughty when you did something that was outside of that realm, but then it became, oh, so what? You know, it keeps changing. I guess the rules keep changing for what makes something work.
No. We're the Hartley boys.
I don't think of myself as a photographer. In fact, I don't usually go like this. Someone else does it. When I work with my Hasselblad, my assistant Jason takes the picture and I dress the dog, and I'm getting their attention. So I'm off where I want them to look, and they're doing this. When I was working alone, when I lived in LA, I'd use one of those bubbles. I worked with a twin lens camera. I'd set it up, and then I'd walk someplace, and you'd see me in the picture, and go like that. It's connected to it. So I didn't think I could work with people at all until I started working with the Polaroid, and you had to work with people. And then I got used to it, and now it doesn't bother me to do stuff, you know, I can think. with someone else around, or I didn't used to be able to. You'd have to be completely alone. I recently finished a series of work that was based on disasters, and that was because they looked like abstract paintings, and I was really interested in painting fake wood and trompe l'oeil kinds of things. So to me, even though they're disasters, they were just sort of fun to look at. And I'd go online and find usually disasters where no one was killed. So I would sometimes write, no one was injured. Because I didn't want to celebrate it. But there's a certain collaging of materials that's so exciting when things collapse, when wonderful houses get destroyed. As pictures, they look great. The person that owns it doesn't feel that way, for sure. And but that fascinated me for a really long time. With the postcard ones, I started to work with any cards, usually the uglier the better, because it felt like it was cheating to use a really beautiful card. So I'd use really awful ones. When I first started working with the postcards, I would just connect them. And one would lead to another scene that would be kind of surprising, but would somehow make sense. So I did that over and over and over, and then I find other ways to work with that. I started to work with them more geometrically. I got so many, I can't stop. People keep giving them to me. I have suitcases of postcards. Oh yeah, this is the first postcard thing I did, where these are main cards and I just sort of connect to them. That's the very first. And it's not very amazing, is it? This is a really great book. I've made all of this up here. So I did a lot of research. Christine was very helpful on this. There's stories in it. There's watercolors. There's paintings. There's photos. Duck cake. Well, I'm working on these cards that I'm turning into airplanes. They have nothing to do with airplanes, but I'm finding lines in them that oddly will connect into that, and they're sort of surprising to me. And I started with the one really odd card that doesn't look anything like a plane, and then I did those fighter planes that looked really cool, and then I had to go search through my material to find something else that I could stick somewhere. And the last thing I did was those black balls, and that made it kind of optically more satisfying somehow. I don't know why, but I just thought about it. I closed my eyes and think, this needs something. What would it be? So balls, black balls. I've never not wanted to work. I go insane if I don't work. I go psychotic, suicidal. I mean, I have to keep scribbling on something. And when I don't work, it's really dreadful. But that almost never happens. Usually when I come here for the first time, it takes me 2 weeks to really figure out what I want to do, because it's such a different space from my studio in New York, which has 30-foot walls and, skylights and all kinds of stuff. It's different, and I wanted it to be different. And I always end up doing something that I wouldn't quite expect. As far as painting goes, it's more like just the air in the studio and the sound of it and the feeling of it that is just so conducive to thinking and doing, or doing and thinking. That's kind of what I do. I do something and then I think. I had a wonderful studio in Bay and Main Street in Santa Monica, 20-foot ceilings, 2,500 square feet, a block from the beach. Dog loved it. Perfect light for photography. When I moved to New York, it was awful. The light was awful. I didn't know how to use lights. My dog hated it. It was kind of a miracle I didn't commit suicide or something. But what did save me was the Polaroid camera, which came with lights and with the ability to do those, and then that prolonged and hurtled me into the next phase. But it was really a bad spell leaving LA. I was really happy there, and I had a great space, but I also couldn't really, I was in a lot of group shows, but I couldn't get a gallery there. Until I moved to New York, I couldn't get a gallery. You have to be a New York artist, you can't be an LA artist.
Orange.
At this point, I don't really think about that anymore, what they think. I love that my parents liked my work. I love that other people, when I was doing videos, walking the dogs through the Lower East Side, and kids would go, "Sesame Street." So that was really interesting that I had an audience that wasn't just an art audience. And my art audience, it took them a while to completely annihilate me for my painting, but now people seem to be okay with that, or I'm not listening. One of the two, either they're okay or I don't hear. I photographed her, Flo, 2 months ago, and she was great, but I don't think it's possible really anymore. So I think that's done. And whether I get another dog or not is a good question. Depends on Christine, my wife, too, whether she wants to deal with that. I'm still going to always be the guy with a dog, and they are amazing. And I believe that what I did with them is truly unrepeatable. Yeah. And when I see them myself, when I'm walking through, and wow, I did that, I'm really happy with it. But I like to do stuff, so I'm going to keep doing other things. I remember showing my work to a group of grade kids in Florida, I think, and someone said, "You're really famous." I said, "Yeah, but compared to the Beatles or Rolling Stones, I'm not." He said, "Not that kind of famous, art famous." He thought that was more important than being, which surprised me. I love this kid, and yeah, art famous, not that kind of famous, which is trivial.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Now I know my ABCs, thanks to Batty, Fade, Chundo, and Crookie.
This video is sponsored by Center for Maine Contemporary Art's Virtual Look Inside Educators Portal, made possible by the Sherman Family Foundation and KHR McNeely Family Foundation, the Dorothea and Leo Rapkin Foundation, and our generous viewers.
Do you have any advice for a young artist?
No, thank you.